I was watching my dad try to adjust the thermostat the other day. It wasn't the old dial on the wall. It was a new smart thermostat controlled by an app on his phone.
Oh, those apps can be something else.
Right. What should have taken maybe 5 seconds turned into this like 5-minute ordeal. The home screen was just a kaleidoscope of icons, energy charts, weather forecasts for 2 weeks out.
Stuff he probably never looks at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A button to sync with other smart devices he doesn't even own, and get this, a seasonal theme setting. All he wanted was to make the room a bit warmer.
Just the basic function.
Yeah. And I watched him squinting at the screen, his fingers sort of hovering over it, just paralyzed by all the choices.
Decision fatigue right there.
Totally. He accidentally tapped on some detailed humidity report, then couldn't figure out how to get back. And there was this quiet sigh, that sound of frustration when tech just makes you feel incompetent.
Instead of empowered. Yeah, I know that sigh.
So finally, he just gave up on the app, walked over to the actual thermostat on the wall, and manually pressed the up arrow.
Good old physical interface.
He turned to me and just said, "It has too many things." Not that it was poorly designed or broken.
Yeah.
Just too many things.
That's it. That observation is really at the heart of this huge shift we're seeing, isn't it?
It really is. It's a move away from that old idea that more is always better and towards understanding the real cost of complexity. It's not just confusion. It's this low-grade, kind of persistent anxiety.
That anxiety is absolutely the currency of modern digital life, you could say. And it's exactly what we're here to talk about today. This deep dive, it's all about functional minimalism, essentialism, and this really critical practice of subtractive design.
Oh, right.
We're looking at research from, cognitive science, business strategy, agile development, all pointing to the same thing. Simplicity isn't just nice to have anymore. It's a fierce competitive weapon.
And the insights we've gathered show this isn't just some aesthetic trend for designers, right? It's a whole philosophy. It fundamentally reshapes how users feel, how businesses stand out, even how efficiently things get done.
Yeah, the old Silicon Valley playbook was always add more features, pile on the perceived value.
Right, more bullet points on the box.
Exactly. But the modern essentialist counter-argument is just, well, it's proving to be far more powerful.
So if we had to boil it all down, all the thinking, all the sources, what's the guiding principle?
It really comes down to that timeless idea, often linked to the design genius Dieter Rams. Less but better.
Less but better.
It means concentrating ruthlessly, really ruthlessly, on the essential aspects, making sure products aren't just burdened with non-essentials, with clutter.
Okay, let's unpack that core philosophy then, because I think when most people hear minimalism, they still picture, a stark white room, maybe one chair, very aesthetic.
That's the perfect starting point. We have to clarify the difference. The sources really define that first wave of digital minimalism as primarily aesthetic. It was about the look.
Clean lines, lots of white space.
Exactly. Often hiding the underlying complexity behind a sleek facade. It looked minimal, but maybe the core functions were still a maze. A million settings just tucked away in some menu you could never find.
Right, and that's where the frustration kicks in again. So the sources suggest we're now in what you call the next wave.
Definitely. Functional minimalism. And this isn't superficial. It's a philosophy that has to permeate everything: planning, coding, delivery. It's a design or style where the absolute fewest, simplest elements are used to create the maximum meaningful effect.
So not just looking simple, but being simple in its core purpose.
Precisely. Functional minimalism is about intentional clarity. We are actively removing unnecessary complexity, dependencies, features, cone, all to prioritize meaningful human outcomes over just, busy work or irrelevant tasks.
It's a deliberate focus on the core user journey, isn't it? Saying no to anything that doesn't really help the user achieve their primary goal.
Yes. And it's fascinating then that one of the clearest frameworks for this didn't come from software initially, but from industrial design decades ago, from Dieter Rams.
A German industrial designer. His 10 principles of good design seem more relevant now than ever, especially in digital.
They absolutely are. Rams, sometimes called a gestalt engineer, a creative engineer, he rooted his design in utility and honesty. Fundamentally, he famously stated that good design involves as little design as possible. Focus only on the essential.
Let's zone in on the principles that really demand this kind of subtraction. First, he said good design must make a product useful.
That's paramount. It has to be completely dedicated to the product's function, disregarding anything that could possibly distract or detract from that usefulness.
So if a feature is maybe clever or looks cool, but it actually slows down the main task, Rams would say, get rid of it.
Without hesitation. And this connects directly to how our brains work. Good design, he said, must be understandable. It clarifies the product structure. Ideally, it makes its function and interface self-explanatory.
When you don't need a manual, that's the sign of good design.
Exactly. And I really appreciate his concept that good design is unobtrusive. Products are tools, right? They shouldn't be decorative objects demanding attention.
They should be neutral, restrained, kind of disappear into the background while you focus on what you're doing.
Yes. The product isn't the star. The user's workflow is the star.
And that leads to maybe his most defining statement for our discussion. Good design is as little design as possible.
The pursuit of purity, of simplicity, which today translates to choosing elegance over exhaustion, really.
It's also interesting how this idea isn't just a modern tech thing. It echoes concepts from much older cultures. It makes this feel less like a trend and more like a universal principle.
It absolutely is universal. The sources trace influences back to Japanese Zen philosophy, specifically wabi-sabi.
Wabi-sabi. That's about finding beauty in imperfection, right? And impermanence, emptiness.
Exactly. So how does beauty and emptiness translate to software?
Good question.
Think about the power of nothing on a screen. Negative space, white space. Wabi-sabi promotes asymmetry, authenticity. In software, this means prioritizing clarity and honesty over just glossy perfection or excessive decoration.
So white space isn't wasted space. It's an active element guiding your eye.
Precisely. And if your interface is honest, it means you don't overpromise. You embrace that the simplest solution might not be the flashiest, but it's often the most effective, the most truthful.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. And then there's the Scandinavian concept, hygge, often linked to coziness, comfort.
Right. Hygge is about creating a sense of contentment, well-being. In design terms, it often means sparseness combined with elements that are comforting and highly utilitarian. Warmth and function, not just cold simplicity.
How does that apply digitally?
You aim to create interfaces that feel calming, reliable, deeply useful. The fewer things demanding your attention, the more comfortable and secure you feel using the tool. It's about digital well-being in a way.
So whether we look at architecture, lack of unnecessary ornament, open spaces, or these philosophies, the core idea is the same. Eliminate the extra stuff to elevate what's truly essential.
And in systems terms, those open spaces become open architecture. Simple geometric forms become elegant, stable, technical solutions. It maps directly.
Okay, so this philosophical grounding leads us straight into the cognitive impact. This is where that idea of less but better becomes really human-centric, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We have to talk about protecting the user's finite human cognitive bandwidth. That's the core resource we're dealing with.
Right. Our brains only have so much capacity for processing things, attention, memory, making decisions, and the sources define this cognitive bandwidth as that limited resource.
And every time an app throws an unnecessary choice at you, or a notification pops up, or you see a dashboard crammed with data you don't need, it consumes that resource. It chips away at it.
And that constant chipping away leads directly to decision fatigue. And crucially, back to that low-grade, persistent anxiety we started with, just feeling worn down by managing complexity.
A functionally minimalist product respects that mental energy. You could almost say it's an act of professional courtesy to the user's brain.
I think about that story of the writer, Maria. She described hitting this wall of digital burnout. It wasn't just work stress, it was the tools themselves.
What kind of tools?
Complex, multifunctional apps. Her client's communication platform, project tools, even her grocery list app, which suddenly had, community features and social sharing she never asked for.
Oh, wow. Feature creep even in a grocery list.
Right. She described feeling constantly anxious, like she was always missing something important buried under layers of digital noise.
So what was her breakthrough?
It came when she consciously sought out quieter tools. She went back to a basic plain text editor for writing, a really straightforward checklist app for tasks, stripped everything back.
And the result?
Her creativity and focus came back because the complexity was literally removed from her environment. She said the silence was, quote, deafening in the most productive way.
That's fantastic. Removing the feature bloat reduced her anxiety because the interface forced her to focus only on what was truly necessary.
It's such a clear example of cognitive ergonomics in action.
Yeah.
That field is all about designing systems to work with our cognitive processes, not against them.
Exactly. It's about reducing mental workload to boost performance and just make the experience better, less stressful.
So let's break down maybe the key principles of cognitive ergonomics that really underpin functional minimalism. First, obviously, reducing cognitive load.
That's the main goal. You do it by streamlining tasks, cutting out distractions, organizing information so it's easy to process. If a user has to do mental gymnastics just to understand a status update, the design has failed. The interface should do the heavy lifting.
Okay, second principle, designing for mental models.
Right. Users don't come to your app with a blank slate. They have expectations based on how things work in the real world or in other software they've used. Good design leverages these existing mental models.
Like using a folder icon for file storage, because it mimics physical folders.
Precisely. If your new system forces users to learn a completely alien way of organizing things, you're just spiking their cognitive load unnecessarily. Stick to familiar patterns where possible.
Third, and this feels huge, recognition over recall.
Oh, absolutely fundamental. Human memory, especially short-term memory, is notoriously unreliable. Good design never forces users to recall specific commands, file paths, or obscure settings from memory.
It's far easier to recognize something when you see it.
Orders of magnitude easier. So clear menus, intuitive icons, helpful suggestions, these are critical. They minimize the burden on our fallible memory.
And the fourth principle,
attention management. Our attention is arguably the scarcest cognitive resource we have. Essentialism demands we protect it fiercely. Techniques like progressive disclosure are key here.
Progressive disclosure. So only showing what's needed at each specific step.
Exactly. Think about an online checkout. You don't see shipping options, tax details, coupon codes, and payment fields all at once on the first screen. That would be overwhelming.
Right. You usually just see your items in a total first.
Then, as you move forward, the relevant complexity is revealed: shipping address, then payment details. It prevents that paralysis of choice and keeps you focused on completing the tasks step by step.
The Google search page is like the ultimate example, isn't it? Just the search bar, maybe some suggestions. The interface basically disappears.
It channels all your cognitive energy into the one primary task: searching. Pure functional minimalism.
But here's the critical warning, right? Sometimes the pursuit of that aesthetic minimalism backfires. Designers can sacrifice usability for a clean look and actually end up increasing cognitive load.
That's the trap. Hiding necessary information or controls just to make it look sparse.
We have to talk about the hamburger menu. The 3 little lines. Looks clean, sure. But the research. It often hides important stuff, makes features harder to find.
It does, because the icon itself isn't universally standardized. It doesn't have a clear affordance. It doesn't visually shout what it does like a shopping cart icon does. You have to learn what it means.
Which is an extra cognitive step you shouldn't need.
And the data backs this up, doesn't it?
Completely. Studies showed that simply adding the word menu under the icon increased clicks by over 7%. Replacing the icon entirely with the word menu in a clear button shape, clicks went up by 20%.
Wow. So clarity beats pure visual minimalism, hands down.
Every single time. Other examples of this pitfall.
Well, think about some early fitness trackers, like the old Fitbit Flex. Very streamlined visually, but the interface was all based on tapping patterns. You had to memorize sequences just to switch modes.
Right, sacrificing intuition entirely for the sake of having no buttons.
Exactly. Or the overflow menu, the 3 dots, the more button.
What's wrong with that? Seems common.
It's often a sign that the design team chose to hide complexity instead of actually solving it. Functional minimalism isn't about sweeping features under the rug. It's about questioning if you need that many features in the first place. If you need an overflow menu for 20 top-level actions, you probably haven't done the hard essentialist work.
So the goal isn't absolute, stark simplicity to the point of being useless. It's finding that sweet spot, the necessary complexity that delivers the function without the cognitive strain.
Precisely. Keep it as simple as possible, but no simpler. That's the balance.
Okay, let's pivot now to the strategy side. We've talked about the user's brain, but why does respecting that cognitive load translate into a serious competitive advantage for businesses?
Because in today's incredibly saturated digital markets, clarity becomes the differentiator. It becomes the niche.
How so?
Well, think about it. When every competitor in a space offers basically the same core features, maybe a checklist, a calendar, file uploads, chat, all around the same price point,
right,
which one wins?
The one that's easiest to use.
Exactly. The one that provides those features in the most effortless, least distracting, least anxiety-inducing way. So the strategic imperative shifts. It's not about competing on the sheer volume of features anymore. It's about competing on clarity and ease of use.
This really hits home with that internal story about the project management app, Synth. Their first attempt, Omnitask, was kind of the poster child for feature bloat.
Oh, completely. Omnitask tried to be absolutely everything to everyone. Gantt charts, complex time tracking, integrated AI, document management. You name it, they tried to cram it in.
Trying to out-feature the big players like Jira or Asana.
Right, the result, a product that was confusing, overwhelming, user retention was low, customer support costs were high because onboarding was a total nightmare. They were feature-rich, but functionally, they were value-poor.
So their pivot was pretty radical.
It was. They launched SynthFocus, and they removed over 80% of Omnitask's features, 80%, to focus laser-like on just one thing. A really simple visual timeline for tracking team progress. That's it.
From a complex behemoth to a single-purpose, elegant tool.
And the business results were apparently astonishing. Initially, some on the engineering team felt like removing all those advanced features was like admitting defeat.
I can imagine all that work.
But the metrics told a completely different story. User acquisition costs dropped dramatically because their marketing message was suddenly crystal clear. Retention soared because users could actually get their core job done quickly and easily.
They subtracted the friction and the noise, and it turned out to be their most profitable move. Focused their energy product, engineering, marketing on the vital few features.
That success perfectly highlights the broader operational and financial benefits you get when you embed lean principles, which are fundamentally about essentialism, into your operations.
Right. Lean methodology is all about eliminating waste, or muda. It's a direct parallel.
Absolutely. And the data shows that organizations really embracing these lean essentialist principles can cut operational costs significantly, I think 20%, 30%, and improve customer delivery times by maybe 50% or even more.
Why such big improvements?
Because focusing on essential features means less code to write, less complex tooling to maintain, less process overhead, fewer bugs, faster testing cycles. It streamlines everything.
It must also help with decision-making at the top, too.
Definitely. When management focuses only on the key performance indicators, KPIs, that truly reflect core business success, instead of getting lost in a sea of vanity metrics or irrelevant data points, decisions become faster, more data-driven, and much more aligned with the strategy.
And we shouldn't overlook just basic product quality and stability. That's a huge business value, right?
Crucial, especially for enterprise software. A functionally minimalist product, almost by definition, has fewer features, which means less code. Less code means fewer places for bugs to hide, fewer things to test, significantly less maintenance debt over time.
So the product is inherently faster, more stable, more robust. That builds trust.
It's a non-negotiable requirement for building long-term customer trust and loyalty. And beyond just performance, minimalism really drives brand value, too.
How so?
Think about it. A brand whose products and messaging are simple, clear, and straightforward often conveys transparency and honesty. In a marketplace that's often cynical, that builds powerful trust.
Like Apple's simple logo or Nike's just do it.
Yeah.
Very direct.
Exactly. Or look at Patagonia. Their minimalist visual style is completely intertwined with their very clear, transparent commitment to sustainability. That consistency between the simple design and the clear ethical action creates an incredibly loyal customer base.
Speaking of sustainability, you mentioned there's a connection between minimalist design and green IT, or environmental responsibility. That's maybe less obvious.
It's a very real, tangible benefit, though often overlooked. Simpler interfaces, simpler logic, they inevitably require fewer computational resources.
Okay.
When you eliminate, say, heavy graphics, complex client-side JavaScript frameworks, unnecessary background processes, excessive data calls back and forth, you reduce the load on your servers.
Which means less energy consumption.
Precisely. Lower server energy usage. Also reduce data transmission overhead, which saves network energy. And often longer battery life on the user's device because the processor isn't working as hard.
So multiply that by thousands or millions of users. And a functionally cleaner design, which means cleaner, more essential code can actually significantly cut an application's overall carbon footprint.
Yes. It aligns design choices directly with tangible corporate social responsibility goals. And that's something investors and customers are paying more and more attention to.
Okay, so we've seen the philosophy, the cognitive benefits, the business case. Now, how do we actually implement this? How do we move from strategy to daily execution on product teams?
This is where functional minimalism has to be institutionalized, right down at the product development level. The sources really emphasize that the product manager, the PM, has to fundamentally shift their role. They need to stop being just a collector of ideas and features.
Like a feature backlog janitor.
Kind of. And start acting as a curator. an essentialist product leader.
Living by design, not by default. I like that phrase.
It means they have to be deliberate choice makers, relentlessly, constantly separating the vital few features and tasks from the trivial many. It demands a values-driven mindset, absolute clarity on the product's core why, and frankly, the courage to say no a lot more often.
And the biggest barrier to actually doing this?
It's almost always the internal culture, that cultural resistance, specifically that deeply ingrained tendency in many engineering and product teams to view adding features as the primary, maybe even the only, metric of progress.
More features equals more value equals progress. That's the default thinking.
It is. And we saw this friction clearly in that anecdote about the planning meeting. You had the designer, Anya, wanting to remove some advanced customization options that metrics showed had extremely low usage. Her goal was to simplify the main user workflow.
But the senior engineer, David, pushed back hard.
Yeah. For him, removing those complex features he'd likely spent a lot of time building, felt like deleting my work, or like admitting the system wasn't robust.
Right.
He saw those features as proof of technical capability.
While Anya, the designer, saw keeping them as basically ignoring the user's sanity and cognitive load.
Exactly. That story is critical because it shows implementing subtractive design isn't just a technical choice about code. It's a culture change. You have to actively redefine success. Success isn't measured by lines of code written or the number of options available. It's measured by how much value you deliver with how little complexity.
So product leaders need to create an environment where teams feel safe, maybe even rewarded, for making the conscious decision not to build something.
That's essential. And this essentialism needs to start right at the foundation, with how we define the product itself, specifically with the concept of the minimum viable product, MVP, which is, as you know, often completely misunderstood.
Oh yeah, MVP is probably the most abused term in tech. People often think it just means releasing something broken or barely functional.
Exactly. A truly minimum product might just be the smallest possible set of features you can technically ship, but an essentialist MVP is different. It still has to provide real customer value. And crucially, it should ideally provide delight. It does the one core thing it promises to do, and it does it exceptionally well.
So it's about ruthlessly distinguishing need to have from nice to have.
Absolutely. The analogy I like is building a mode of transport. A bad minimalist MVP might just be a wheel. It's minimal, sure, but it's useless on its own.
Right.
A good essentialist MVP might be a skateboard. It fully solves the core problem, personal transportation, but in a simple, cohesive, even delightful way. It doesn't need the complexity of an engine or a roof yet. It focuses on delivering that core value elegantly.
Okay, so how do Agile methodologies support this essentialist approach in practice?
Well, several Agile principles align perfectly. Let's start with queuing theory. It sounds academic, but it directly informs Lean and Scrum.
Queuing theory, the study of waiting lines. How does that apply to code?
It applies perfectly. The core idea we use comes from Little's Law. Basically, it tells us that to increase the speed of delivery, your throughput, you must reduce the amount of work in progress, or WIP.
Okay.
In Agile terms, large, complex user stories or big features are like huge jobs that get stuck in the queue. They block everything behind them. They inflate your WIP, slow down your overall velocity, and introduce massive points of failure if they go wrong.
So essentialism demands small work packages.
Small, independent, cohesive work packages, user stories that can flow smoothly and quickly through the development system. Less WIP equals faster flow.
Which means teams need to focus on optimizing user stories, breaking things down.
Constantly. You need to audit your stories for complexity creep. Red flags are things like seeing and or in the story title or description. That usually means you're trying to cram two features into one story.
We're seeing huge lists of acceptance criteria, or lots of dependencies on other unfinished work.
Exactly. The goal for each story should be internal functional cohesion. It delivers one complete small piece of value on its own.
What about at the code level itself? Any practices there that enforce minimalism?
Absolutely. Test-driven development, TDD, is fundamentally minimalist in its approach. It inherently prevents engineers from building unnecessary stuff.
How does TDD force that?
Because of its core cycle.
Right?
Red-green refactor. First, you write a test for the functionality you need, and it fails. Red. Then, and this is key, you write the absolute simplest code possible just to make that specific test pass. Green. Only after it passes do you refactor or clean up the code.
That step writing only the simplest code to pass the test acts like a firewall against adding extra features.
Precisely. It prevents engineers from adding speculative features, gold-plating premature optimizations, or any code that's nice to have but not strictly required by the test right now. If the test doesn't demand it, you literally don't build it.
That discipline needs to extend to how teams manage their time too, right?
Yes, time boxing. Time is the ultimate finite resource. Every agile ceremony, the daily scrum, planning sessions, retrospectives must be ruthlessly protected by strict time limits and clear agendas.
To prevent scope creep in meetings.
And to prevent the most insidious form of waste. Meetings that just drag on endlessly because they get bogged down in unnecessary detail or side conversations. The daily scrum, for instance, should be laser-focused on coordination and identifying blockers, usually in 15 minutes max. Deep problem-solving happens later, outside that focused check-in. Keep the main flow moving.
Okay, one last big area for essentialism in product development. Managing that digital clutter, especially the infamous product backlog.
Ah, yes, the backlog. This is where a really powerful, though sometimes scary, tactic comes in. Backlog bankruptcy.
Backlog bankruptcy.
That's what
drastic. It means literally deleting backlog items.
It often does. It means deleting every story, bug, idea, feature request, everything that isn't realistically going to be worked on in the near term, say the next 3 to 6 months.
Wow. That could be hundreds, even thousands of items for some teams. It feels almost negligent, like throwing away potentially good ideas.
It feels terrifying. But the essentialist argument is that a massive multi-year backlog isn't an asset, it's a liability. It's a huge cognitive distraction for the entire team. It creates this illusion of progress and overwhelming work that just drains energy and focus.
So the thinking is, if an idea is truly important.
If it's truly important, high value, and still aligns with the core product vision, it will surface again, either through new customer discovery, or market changes, or stakeholder requests. Declaring bankruptcy frees the team from the burden of managing this huge pile of someday maybe items, allowing them to achieve much higher velocity on the things that actually matter right now.
And making that decision, whether it's bankruptcy or just cutting features, requires overcoming one last huge mental barrier, doesn't it?
The sunk cost fallacy, a massive killer of good product decisions.
That's our tendency to keep investing in something, time, money, effort, just because we've already invested so much, even if it's clearly not working out or providing value anymore. We hate to waste the past effort.
Right. And this is where the essentialist PM has to rely purely on logic, not emotion. The time and resources already spent are gone. They are irrelevant to the future decision.
The only things that matter are the future costs and benefits. Does this feature align with our core vision now? What will it cost to maintain going forward?
Exactly. Essentialism empowers product leaders to recognize when it's time to cut losses, to walk away from something that isn't working, regardless of how much effort went into it initially. The cost of keeping a feature that doesn't serve the core purpose is ongoing waste. Subtraction becomes the path to operational freedom and clarity.
So this whole journey from looking at my dad's thermostat app to the details of agile queuing theory, it really all boils down to having the courage required for subtraction, doesn't it?
It does. It's about making that deliberate choice to go big on only a few crucial things instead of scattering your energy across a trivial many.
And when a product team really commits to this kind of human-centered minimalism, what they're really doing is showing profound respect for the user.
Right.
For their time, their attention, their mental energy.
Absolutely. And the result isn't just a product that's easier to use. It's a product that feels intentional, calm, focused, and ultimately deeply successful because it truly serves its purpose without causing stress. This intentional subtraction is how we build maybe a bit more digital serenity.
It really suggests the future of digital products isn't this endless race to add more complexity, more features. It's a journey towards elegant simplicity. It brings to mind that quote, often attributed to Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, perfection is attained not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away.